After we discovered the mangled corpse of our missing colleague, dread spread through our group like a plague. The air itself felt poisoned with fear. We buried him hastily, whispering prayers that he might finally find peace. But the grim truth pressed against our hearts. Something monstrous was hunting us. We tried to continue our survey as though clinging to normalcy would protect us. Clipboards in trembling hands, measuring tape stretched across sand that had been soaked with blood only hours before. But every gust of wind, every shadow on the waves, made our nerves scream. The ocean no longer looked calm, it looked like a black maw waiting to swallow us whole. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind replayed the guttural cries of my colleague, the way his eyes were frozen wide in terror, as if death itself had imprinted upon them. I rose quietly, needing fresh air. The moonlight spilled over the ruined village nearby, its skeletal houses jutting from the earth like gravestones. I should have turned back, but something curiosity, or perhaps madness, drew me toward the shoreline. Then I heard it, a faint cry, almost human, muffled beneath the crash of waves. My chest tightened. I crept through tall grass and peered out. That's when I saw it again. The creature was towering, at least 2 meters tall, its body glistening with scales that shimmered like wet obsidian. A jagged dorsal fin ran down its back, twitching with every movement. Its hands or claws were webbed, yet horrifyingly human-like, ending in talons that gleamed under the moon. And its eyes, 2 burning coals that fixed upon its prey, pinned beneath. The monster was another member of my team. The poor man writhed helplessly, his screams gurgling as the creature's claw raked across his chest. Blood sprayed in arcs, darkening the sand. Beast sank its teeth into his shoulder, ripping away flesh with a sickening crunch. I gagged, bile rising in my throat, but my body refused to move. I was a statue of terror, forced to witness the carnage. The creature tore into him with savage hunger, pulling free organs, tossing them aside like discarded scraps. When it wrenched the heart from his chest, I knew I was watching something far worse than a nightmare. This was ritual slaughter, deliberate, merciless. Finally, the beast severed his head with a single swipe of its claw. It dragged the headless body toward the waves, leaving a trail of blood that glowed under the moonlight. The severed head rolled limply in the sand, mouth frozen in a silent scream. I clenched, my teeth so hard they nearly cracked, praying the thing wouldn't notice me. Somehow, miraculously, it didn't. It vanished into the sea, hauling its prize like a predator returning to its lair. I stumbled back to the house, heart hammering. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Sleep was impossible. Every creak of the old wooden floorboards sounded like claws scraping closer. When dawn broke, hollow-eyed, I told the others everything I had seen. Panic erupted. Some wanted to flee immediately, others insisted we had to finish our assignment. Debate ended when another body was discovered near the village as well, torn apart in the same grotesque fashion that silenced all arguments. We were no longer surveyors, we were prey. We tried to leave that very afternoon, but the narrow road out was blocked by fallen trees, as though nature itself conspired to trap us. The men hacked at the branches with machetes, their faces pale with exhaustion and dread. Each strike of metal against wood echoed like a clock ticking toward our doom. As the sun set, shadows lengthened and the air grew heavy. I organized night watches, pairs of us stationed at every corner of the decrepit house. Weapons were scarce rusted pipes, broken boards, anything with a jagged edge. None of it seemed enough. The hours crawled. Wind rattled the shutters. Waves whispered secrets only the dead should hear. Then came the noises, soft at first, like leaves rustling. But it grew, dozens of footsteps squelching through wet sand. We peered out through cracks in the wood and froze. They were everywhere, not One creature, but an entire horde. Their silhouettes stalked across the moonlit beach, scales glimmering, red eyes glowing like a procession of lanterns. They surrounded the house in silence, patient as wolves. "Turn off the lights," I hissed, and the lanterns were snuffed out. Darkness swallowed us whole. We held our breath, hearts thundering loud enough I feared the beasts could hear them. The scratching began, talons against wood, prying at the door. The walls shuddered. With each impact, I pressed my back against the trembling boards, knowing they wouldn't hold. One final crash splintered the frame, and the door burst inward. They poured in. Grotesque bodies surged through the opening, claws slashing, jaws snapping. Their stench of rot and blood choked the air. Screams erupted all around me as the creatures fell upon my colleagues. One was dragged down instantly, his throat ripped out. Another was torn in half, intestines spilling across the floorboards. Chaos consumed the room. People scattered, shoving, clawing to escape. I heard bones crunch, flesh tear, the wet sound of organs devoured. The house became an abattoir, walls painted with gore. I ran, not knowing where. Just away. The screams followed me out into the night, echoing through the village ruins. Behind me, the monsters feasted. Ahead, only darkness. I sprinted through the skeletal remains of the village, lungs burning, heart pounding as though it might shatter my ribs. Behind me, literal howls and inhuman shrieks reverberated through the night. I ducked into a collapsed barn, pressing myself against damp, moldy wood, praying the creatures wouldn't smell my fear. But the night carried their voices, clicks, growls, the scrape of claws on stone. They were hunting. Through a broken slat I watched them stalk, silhouettes gliding between ruins, their eyes glowing like coals. They sniffed the air, jaws snapping at nothing. The barn felt smaller with every second. The walls closed in. My breath caught in my throat. I clamped my hand over my mouth to keep silent. One wrong sound, and I would join the corpses already littering the sand. A sudden crash shattered the silence. One of the monsters had smashed into the hut nearby. Screams erupted. Human screams. Some of my colleagues hadn't escaped far enough. I watched in horror as they were dragged into the open, torn limb from limb. Their cries faded into wet gurgles. The sand drank their blood. I forced myself to move. To stay was death. Slipping from the barn, I crept toward the tree line. Every step crunched against gravel and broken glass. The sound thundered in my ears. But the creatures didn't notice. They were too busy feasting. I slipped into the forest, branches whipping my face, roots clutching at my ankles. The deeper I went, the quieter it became. Only the beat of my pulse filled the silence. At dawn, I staggered back to the beach house. What remained of us gathered there, fewer than half, hollow eyes, trembling hands. We didn't speak. There were no words left. We simply sat, waiting for the sun to rise higher, as though daylight could protect us. But the ocean was calm again, deceptively beautiful, as though it had not swallowed lives only hours before. That day we tried to plan. Some wanted to flee inland. Others suggested building barricades. Arguments flared, but none of us had real solutions. The truth was clear. We were trapped between sea and forest, hunted by things not of this world. I felt. Despair gnawed me, yet I forced myself to lead. If not me, who? Night fell again. None of us wanted to sleep, but exhaustion dragged at our bones. We set watches, lit no fires. The house creaked, a coffin waiting to be nailed shut. Somewhere in the distance, waves whispered. But soon another sound joined them, low, guttural chants, voices, dozens of them, carried across the shore. The monsters were not merely beasts, they were gathering. They were calling. We crowded at the windows, Straining to see. Moonlight revealed shapes on the beach, scores of them, kneeling in a circle, swaying. They chanted in a language thick and wet, like gurgling through water. Symbols were carved into the sand, glowing faintly as waves lapped at them. The creatures threw back their heads and howled in unison. The sound pierced bone, made teeth ache. It was a ritual, a summoning. Something rose from the waves. At first it seemed like a shadow, a trick of light on the tide. But then the water heaved upward, higher and higher, until a massive figure loomed above the horde. It was larger than any creature I had seen, its body bristling with fins, its mouth splitting into rows upon rows of jagged teeth. Its eyes opened, two enormous, lidless orbs that glowed like lighthouses, and they turned it toward us. We fell back from the window, terror choking us. One of my colleagues whispered, "What is that?" No one answered. The truth was unbearable. It was their god. The chanting grew louder, the ground vibrating with every guttural note. The sea monster roared, a sound so deep it rattled the marrow in my bones. The horde rose and began moving toward the village, toward us. We scrambled to block doors, shove furniture against walls. But what defense could rotting wood provide against an army of nightmares? The first impact shook the house to its foundations. Boards splintered, dust cascaded from the ceiling. Screams erupted as claws punched through walls. We fought back with whatever we had: pipes, stones, even bare fists. Blood sprayed, human and monster alike. But for everyone we struck down, 3 more forced their way inside. I grabbed a rusted iron bar and swung wildly, smashing into one of the creatures. Its skull cracked, dark ichor spilling across my hands. It shrieked and collapsed, twitching. But another lunged, its claws slicing across my arm. Pain seared through me. I staggered back, swinging again, desperate. The house became a slaughterhouse. Bodies crashed against walls. Screams tangled with roars. I saw one of my men dragged through a window, his legs kicking as he vanished into the night. Another was crushed beneath a collapsing beam. The air grew thick with blood and smoke. And then I saw it, the massive figure still waiting on the shore, its glowing eyes fixed upon us. It wasn't moving. It didn't need to. The horde was its hands, its jaws, its will made flesh, and we were already lost. Walls gave way, one after another. Boards cracked and fell as the creatures poured inside. Their stench was unbearable: salt, rot, and iron. My ears rang with screams, with the shriek of wood splintering, with the thunder of claws against stone. Shadows lunged from every corner, their eyes burning like coals. We fought until our arms gave out. I swung the iron bar again and again, each impact jarring my bones. Beside me, someone drove a chair leg through a monster's throat. It gurgled and collapsed, spraying black ichor across the floor. But more came. Always more. Our numbers dwindled. With every passing minute, I stumbled over a corpse human, mangled beyond recognition. The air was thick with smoke and blood, so heavy it clung to my skin. Through the haze, I glimpsed the ocean. The towering figure still stood there, motionless, eyes glowing brighter than the moon, watching. I understood then. This was no simple feeding. This was a purge. We broke. Panic shattered what little order remained. Some tried to flee into the forest, their cries fading into the night, cut short by wet tearing sounds. Others dropped to their knees, praying to gods who had long abandoned them. I stayed, driven not by courage but by a numb, animal instinct to survive. I struck, I dodged, I bled. Time lost meaning in that blood-soaked chaos. Then, silence. It came suddenly, like a curtain dropping. The creatures froze. One by one, they turned toward the sea. Even those inside the house slithered back out. leaving corpses strewn like discarded dolls. The chanting began again, low, guttural, rising like a tide. I crawled to the shattered window and looked. The giant was moving. Its massive body shifted forward, waves crashing as it waded closer. Each step sent tremors through the earth. Sand erupted around its claws. The creatures prostrated themselves, their voices a deafening chorus. My blood turned cold. If it reached the village, nothing would remain. I ran. There was no plan, no destination, just escape. The forest swallowed me, branches tearing my skin, shadows swallowing every path. Behind me, the earth shook with each step of the Leviathan. I could hear walls collapsing, the groan of timbers breaking. The village was being erased. Hours blurred together. I don't remember how long I ran. At last, exhaustion dragged me to the ground. I lay in the undergrowth, chest heaving, ears straining. The forest was silent. Too silent. Even insects seemed to have fled. I dared not sleep, but eventually, darkness claimed me. When I woke, the sun was high. The world looked normal. Birds sang, wind rustled through the trees. For a moment I convinced myself that it had been a nightmare, but then the smell reached me. Salt, blood, decay. I staggered back toward the beach. What I found haunts me still. The village was gone. Nothing remained but rubble and ash, soaked in blood that stained the sand crimson. Bodies lay everywhere, ripped open, gutted, decapitated. Some were no more than bones slick with gore. The sea lapped gently at the shore, carrying with it pieces of flesh. And on the horizon, I saw the giant recede, sinking back into the depths. The horde followed, slipping into the waves one by one, vanishing beneath the surface. Until only silence remained. I should have left. I should have run and never looked back. But something rooted me there. Perhaps shock. Perhaps madness. Or perhaps the faint sound I heard beneath the waves. A whisper, soft yet unmistakable, curling through my skull like smoke. It called my name. Days that followed are a blur. I wandered the ruins, unable to eat, unable to think. At night, I dreamed of the Leviathan's eyes. Two burning orbs staring through the dark, promising salvation or damnation. When I woke, my body ached with salt, my lungs burned with seawater. I no longer knew where the dream ended and reality began. One evening, as the sun bled into the horizon, I heard it again. The whisper rose from the waves, louder this time, insistent. The sea shimmered, black and endless. I stepped closer. The water licked my feet, cold as knives. And in the reflection of the tide, I saw them, eyes glowing, waiting. Behind. Footsteps. I spun. Survivors, two of them, faces pale, eyes wild. They had hidden as I had. We stared at one another, broken, desperate. One asked, "Did you hear it too?" I nodded, and in that moment, I understood. We were marked. The sea had claimed us. That night we huddled together in the ruins of the barn, but sleep was impossible. The chanting began again, distant but clear, rising from the waves. My companions covered their ears, rocking, murmuring prayers. I sat still listening. The sound no longer filled me with dread. It filled me with longing. When dawn came, one of them was gone. Only footprints led to the shore, vanishing into the surf. The other clutched my arm, eyes wide. "They're taking us," he whispered. One by one. He shook until his teeth chattered. Before night fell, he ran screaming into the forest. I never saw him again. Alone I returned to the beach. The tide was high, crimson foam frothing at the edge. I stood in the water, chest deep, as the whispers rose. And then I saw it, rising once more from the abyss. The Leviathan's eyes locked on mine. I should have run. I should have screamed. Instead, I opened my mouth and whispered back, The waves closed over me. Darkness swallowed the sky, but I did not drown. I woke in silence, surrounded by ruins not of wood or stone, but of coral and bone. The walls pulsed faintly, alive with something that was not life. Shapes moved in the distance, figures half human, half beast, their limbs elongated, their jaws split with gills. They turned their glowing eyes toward me, and for the first time, I did not feel fear. I felt welcomed that the Leviathan's shadow loomed above, vast and eternal. Its voice thundered in my skull, words too ancient to comprehend, but the meaning was clear. I was chosen. I was remade. The sea had claimed me, as it claimed all who lingered too long. And when I opened my mouth to scream, salt water poured out thick, endless, filling me with its dreadful blessing. The transformation was not immediate. It came in waves, days of unbearable pain, nights of fevered visions. I drifted between two worlds, one of broken humanity, and one of the abyss. Every breath carried the taste of salt. Every heartbeat, the rhythm of the tide. My skin thickened, pale scales shimmering faintly under the moonlight. I clawed at myself, desperate to peel them away, but they always grew back stronger. My fingernails split, lengthened, hardened into claws. I was no longer a man. And yet, I was not fully one of them. The others, those who had been taken long before me, watched from the shadows. Their gills flared as they whispered in a language older than the shore. When I tried to approach, they fled. When I tried to hide, they found me. I belonged to neither shore nor sea. I was a bridge, a vessel. The Leviathan's voice guided me. It told me of cycles, of tides that were not water but blood, of offerings, always offerings. The massacre 45 years ago was not the first, nor the last. Each generation, the sea claimed its due, and now, it had chosen me to herald the next. I resisted. God help me, I resisted. I stumbled through the ruins of the village, screaming into the emptiness, pleading for deliverance. But no God answered. Only the waves, crashing, laughing, dragging me deeper into madness. At night, the survivors of the horde gathered on the shore. Their glowing eyes pierced the fog as they chanted, and I chanted with them, though I did not know the words. One evening, when the tide pulled far back, I saw the truth. Beneath the receding water lay shapes, pits carved into the sand, lined with bones that stretched farther than sight. Skulls grinned up from the depths, jawless and broken. Rib cages sprawled like cages of failed prayers. It was a graveyard, older than the village, older than the nation, older than memory itself. This was their temple, and I was to be its priest. The days blurred. My body rotted and renewed, caught between decay and rebirth. Each morning I woke weaker. Each night I grew stronger. Voices sang through my dreams, sometimes tender, sometimes cruel. They promised eternity. They promised hunger. I could not tell which I wanted more. Then, the investigators came. I watched them from the trees, their uniforms bright, their equipment gleaming in the sun. They spoke in confident tones, their radios crackling, their boots sinking into sand that had drunk centuries of blood. They believed themselves prepared. They believed their guns and cameras would save them. Fools. Brave. Doomed fools. The Leviathan stirred as night fell, its eyes open beneath the waves. Two vast lanterns that turned the sea red. The investigators laughed nervously at first, mistaking the glow for reflection. But when the chanting began, when the first shapes rose from the surf, their laughter died. I wanted to warn them. I wanted to scream, to rush into their midst, to beg them to leave before it was too late. But my tongue was no longer my own. Salt and blood tangled my words. All I could do was watch as the cycle began again. The creatures emerged, endless, hungry. Their claws tore through tents. Their teeth cracked bone like dry wood. Screams filled the night, familiar, inevitable. I crouched in the shadows, trembling, torn between pity and obedience. One of the investigators locked eyes with me. His face twisted in horror as he saw the scales on my skin. He opened his mouth to call out, but a claw burst through his chest before he could speak. I fled. Again and again, I fled. Through the forest, across the dunes, into the black embrace of the night. But there is no escape, not from them. Not from myself, for I am the witness. I am the vessel. And when the next tide comes, I will not resist. I will lead them. The forest swallowed me whole. I stumbled deeper, the air thick with mist and the stench of brine. Each tree groaned like it, carried the weight of centuries, bark slick with salt. I knew I was only running in circles, but I could not stop. The screams of the investigators still echoed behind me, their cries twisting into gurgles as the sea claimed them. I pressed my hands over my ears, but the sound was inside me now, inside my bones, inside my blood. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time was meaningless in that place. The moon hung low, red and swollen, its light cutting the mist into jagged blades. I fell to my knees, gasping when I heard it, a whisper, soft and broken, carried by the wind. My name. Come back, it said. Join us. I staggered to my feet and followed the voice, through thickets that tore my skin, through marshland that sucked at my ankles. The ground pulsed like it was alive, breathing with the tide. And then I saw them, dozens of shapes rising from the swamp, their scales glistening like wet obsidian. Eyes glowed red, mouths stretched wide in hunger, but they did not attack. They parted, forming a path that led deeper into the mist. At the end of that path stood something vast. It towered over the trees, its body coiled like a serpent carved from the night itself. Its eyes burned brighter than the moon, and its maw split open to reveal rows of teeth, endless and glistening. The Leviathan, the one that had haunted every dream, every vision, every moment of my unraveling. You are mine. It thundered, the voice rolling like waves crashing against cliffs. You will carry my hunger. You will spread my tide. I fell forward, pressing my face into the mud, unable to resist the weight of its command. Every instinct screamed to deny it, but my body obeyed. My veins surged with its call, a tide of salt and blood flooding through me. My screams bubbled up as scales split through my skin, as my spine cracked and reshaped, as gills tore open along my neck. It was agony beyond words, and yet beneath the torment, there was ecstasy, a belonging I had never known. The Leviathan lowered its head, its breath reeking of rot and centuries of drowned corpses. Its tongue, rough and barbed, slid across my face, marking me, claiming me. When it drew back, the swamp erupted with the cries of the horde. They bowed, clawed hands pressed into the mud, their voices rising in a chant older than the earth. I was no longer one of the survivors. No longer a victim, I was their herald. That night, I led them to the village. The ruins that had once been a home to laughter and firelight now became an altar. We dragged the corpses of the investigators there, arranging them in circles, their lifeless eyes staring into the void. The chant grew louder. I raised my arms, and the tide surged inland as though obeying me. The Leviathan's shadow loomed over us, its body blotting out the stars, and I knew, with a clarity sharper than any blade, the world beyond would never be safe again, for this was only the beginning. The sea had tasted blood once more, and it would never be satisfied. The rituals repeated, night after night. Each scream became part of the chorus, each drop of blood another verse in the hymn of the sea. I lost count of the days, of how many fell to the tide's hunger, but I remembered every face, the eyes of my colleagues, the villagers, the investigators, They haunted me even as their bones joined the endless graveyard beneath the waves. And yet, I remained neither fully man nor fully beast. A herald, a prisoner, a curse-given flesh. The Leviathan whispered its truths into me, filling the hollow spaces where my humanity once lived. It told me of worlds drowned, of civilizations swallowed whole. We were nothing more than the next offering. I tried to resist. I tried to believe there was still hope. But hope is fragile when you have tasted eternity, when you have watched the sea rise in answer to your command, when the hunger of the abyss beats louder in your chest than your own heart. One night, I found myself alone on the shore. The moon bled red across the horizon, and the waves hissed like serpents. I stared at my reflection in the tide pools, a face half human, half monstrosity. Eyes glowing faintly, skin scaled and pale. I did not know if I should weep or laugh. I only knew that there was no return, that the villagers never came back. The government sealed the place, declaring it forbidden. Cursed. But fences cannot hold back the sea. Warnings cannot silence the tide. Those who wander too close vanish. Their bodies are never found. Only the waves, crimson and endless, remain as proof. And so I remain too. I walk the ruins. I hear the whispers. Feel the Leviathan's breath in every gust of wind. I am the witness, the vessel, the herald. When the tide rises again, and it always rises, I will be there. And if you ever come to that beach, if you ever see the sign that says danger, nitrogen monoxide swimming, turn back. Do not linger. Do not listen. Because if you stay too long, the whispers will find you too. And the tide never forgets its due.